Does the party have to be together? Does it have to be unified? I'm very different than everybody else, perhaps, that's ever run for office. I actually don't think so.
Next on Newsmax Prime, we may live in the United States, but can the GOP remain united? No big deal, says Donald Trump. So will Paul Ryan keep on crying? We'll have the latest. Then John Kerry claims we now live in a borderless world, while thousands of illegals pour across what's supposed to be our southern border. Plus, the New York Times profiles Obama's national security know-it-all, who admits deceiving us on the Iran deal as the Iranians test another ballistic missile. Your chance to call in and comment straight ahead as Newsmax Prime starts right now. Good evening and welcome to the Monday night edition of Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, Ryan as Gore. Leslie Gore. She famously sang, "It's my party and I'll cry if I want to." And now, a half century later, the Speaker of the House seems to be singing those same words. So will Speaker Ryan start to sing from the same sheet of music as the presumptive Republican nominee, or will he continue to chair the Crybaby Caucus and in the process give up his role as chairman of the Republican Convention? John Bachman has more.
Well, hey, JD, that big meeting between Paul Ryan and Donald Trump is now less than 3 days away. And right now, there are very few signs that the tension between the Republican House Speaker and the GOP's presumptive nominee will cool off before then, especially now with Sarah Palin getting involved.
Are you ready to make America great again?
Sarah Palin, one of Trump's earliest high-profile supporters in the presidential race, is also now supporting the man running to replace Paul Ryan.
And what Paul Ryan and his ilk, again, their problem is they feel so threatened at this
Palin
point.
telling CNN that she's backing Paul Nehlen, seen here in his first campaign ad, riding his motorcycle. Meanwhile, today, Ryan also telling the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that he would quit as the GOP's convention chair, quote, if Donald Trump asks him to. Ryan, who still says he's not ready to support Trump yet, will be meeting with the presumptive nominee on Thursday.
You know, she's got this goofy friend named Elizabeth Warren. She's on her Twitter rant. She's a goofus. She is a goofus. She's a basket case. By the way,
as for Trump, who admitted to being caught off guard by Ryan's refusal to back him right away, focused some of his attacks elsewhere, namely Elizabeth Warren, who responded on Twitter. Goofy at real Donald Trump, question mark, for a guy with the
best words.
That's a pretty lame nickname. Weak. Well, JD, today, WTMJ Radio asked Paul Ryan what he thought about Palin backing Paul Nehlen so the House Speaker can get Cantor, a reference to Eric Cantor, who lost in his primary race last year. Well, Ryan sounded confident, adding that he doesn't worry too much about, quote, outside agitation.
Well, some of that agitation has come courtesy of the House Speaker himself within his own district, Wisconsin 1. Hey, this reminder, we will be taking your calls during the next hour at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. And in stark contrast to a story you may have seen on our parent website, Newsmax.com, where former Facebook workers say that Facebook blacklisted Newsmax and other leading conservative news websites. Here, we are not interested in censoring your views. We're inviting you to call in and share them with us because we truly are America's Forum. Now, for more on what's going on within the Republican Party, we're pleased to be joined by pollster John Zogby of Zogby Analytics. John's also the director of the Keenan Center for Entrepreneurship and Ethics at his alma mater, Lemoyne College, and he's the co-author of the book, First Globals, Understanding, Managing, and Unleashing Our Millennial Generation. John joins us tonight from Utica, New York. And meantime, Skyping in from Northern Virginia, it's presidential historian Craig Shirley. Craig also serves as president of Shirley and Bannister Public Affairs, and he is the author of Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Gentlemen, thanks to you both for your time here on Newsmax Prime. And so, Craig, it comes down to a meeting Thursday, Ryan and Trump. Is this political posturing, or is there more to it?
No, JD, I think it is political posturing. You remember in 1960,
Richard Nixon was on his way to the nomination of the Republican Party, and yet Nelson Rockefeller, who was then governor of New York, was famously sitting it out and harumping from the sideline. Nixon had to go to New York City to meet with Nelson Rockefeller. What was produced was later infamously known as the Compact of Fifth Avenue, where Nixon made all sorts of concessions to Nelson Rockefeller. And who knows, that election was so close, Nixon's show of weakness may have cost him the election. He only lost by 100,000 votes out of something like 52 million cast. So probably Donald Trump going to meet with Ryan is a good sign of faith, but he shouldn't make any promises or make any concessions to Ryan whatsoever. Simply to say to Paul Ryan, look, I'm the nominee of the party. You have to fall in line behind me now.
Now, speaking of Ryan, John Zogby, it appears that the speaker is in serious damage control mode. Today, he sat down at his district office in Janesville with reporters from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and he said that a third-party run would be, quote, a disaster for the GOP. You'll recall that earlier this weekend, it was reported that Bill Kristol was trying to reach out to Mitt Romney to get him to mount an outside effort. Do you think Ryan is trying to regain some stature he lost last week with his wait-and-see attitude toward Donald Trump?
I don't. And I respect my friend, and I mean my friend Craig Shirley. I really respect his sense of history as well. I think the GOP is dead. I think it's dead as a doorknob. Now, can Donald Trump win? I think possibly, defying all the rules, he can win, although it doesn't look good right now. But I think as an organized political party, and the capacity to heal these deep-seated wounds that are both ideological and deeply personal, I don't think it's possible. I think what you're hearing from a Paul Ryan is actually a sign of resignation, meaning, look, you asked me to save this. I became speaker. It's not something that I actively sought. I don't want to be president of the United States at this point in time. I tried. And it's just not working. Well, I think it's a last-ditch effort maybe to meet with Donald Trump, but I think the differences are so deep that this rift can't be healed.
Let me get back to Craig Shirley for a rebuttal since you mentioned his name. So, Craig, you hear John, he says GOP RIP, but for those of us who've been around the block in Republican circles, Paul Ryan is ambitious. He wouldn't mind seeing the apple cart upset to be the nominee 4 years from now, would he?
No, but the worst thing he could do would be to sit on the sidelines and carp and point fingers at Donald Trump. The best thing he could do for himself would be to get behind Trump and get behind Trump enthusiastically. That way, if Trump loses in November, nobody's pointing the finger at him. You remember in 1964 when everybody took a powder on Goldwater, and I mean everybody, Nelson Rockefeller, George Romney, everybody. The only major national Republican candidate who got in his plane and campaigned day after day after day after day for Barry Goldwater was Richard Nixon. And it paid off in his renomination 4 years later. He built up a lot of chits and a lot of IOUs and a lot of appreciation for basically going down with the Goldwater ship. The best thing Ryan could do for himself in the short term and the long term is to get behind Donald Trump. I agree with John. I think the GOP is in big trouble. I think it's definitely in the ideological wilderness. Whether or not it's cast adrift or whether or not it's dead, I don't know. I do know that Hillary Clinton is a great organizing principle and a great organizing tool for the Republican Party, and she herself has her own problems, plus the 8-year itch, whereas the most presidencies do not succeed themselves. In other words, is that you have 8 years of one party holding power, and then the American people feel the need to replace it with the other party, and that's happened every 8 years since FDR.
Well, let me go from that to something else that's going on. There's a different itch that people need to scratch. A whole lot of Republicans, a whole lot of people in general, don't like to see this dispute between Trump and Ryan. In fact, my old colleague in the House, Joe Scarborough, on MSNBC's Morning Joe, says that this is putting some doubt concerning the great negotiating skills, allegedly, of Donald Trump. Let's listen to this.
If he can't handle Paul Ryan in negotiations like this without blowing it up and upping the ante like this,
they'll be fine.
What's he going to do when he starts negotiating with people across the world? If he can't handle this Paul Ryan negotiation any better than this.
So what about it, John Zogby? Does the Donald have to step carefully with the speaker?
Well, he does, and he must, but I'm not sure that he wants to or is equipped to. I think he's on automatic pilot, meaning he has seen what has worked for him. The good Donald Trump never wins out over the controversial, the outrageous Donald Trump. Does it make sense to be able to show a potential constituency that the great deal maker can actually deal with the Speaker of the House of his own party, and then be able to negotiate with the Speaker of the House after he becomes president? Of course it makes sense, but there's so much about the outrage that the Donald Trump candidacy has shown that just negates any effort. I don't see any handshake or kumbaya coming out of Thursday.
Well, but since you're a pollster, John, Paul Ryan has to take a look at numbers in terms of Congress and just how low it's sitting, and also hearing the footsteps of Paul Nehlen, his challenger back home in Wisconsin. And of course, Sarah Palin, John Bachman talked about in his report. Donald Trump was asked about that this morning. Listen to the Donald's response about Sarah Palin endorsing Paul Nehlen.
I have nothing to do with that. I mean, that's her. Sarah is very much a free agent. She's a terrific person, but she's very much a free agent. And I didn't know about this until yesterday. I guess she's been fighting, or she's endorsing somebody that's running against Paul Ryan. And I didn't know about it until yesterday when I read about it.
All right, so he may not know about it, but the extra pressure I don't think hurts. Hey, listen, with a minute and a half left, let's go to the phones from a town I know pretty well, Clinton, North Carolina. Robbie is on the line. Hi, Robbie.
Hey, JD, how you doing?
Doing fine, thanks. What's on your mind tonight?
Yes, sir. I just want to, first of all, thank you for being a Christian.
Well, thank you.
And second of all, I have never seen anyone go through a political lynching like Donald Trump has been through. He has been attacked not only from the media, but from every angle. And I've never seen anything like it.
Well, part of it goes with the territory, but Craig Shirley, in the 45 seconds we have right now, when you win the nomination, certainly this kind of backlash from Republican regulars and people like Paul Ryan, it's not only harmful to Trump, it's not doing Ryan any favors, is it? About 30 seconds.
Well, but JD, to your caller's point and to your point, is that it often happens. In fact, it happens more often than not that challengers are attacked in office, often viciously attacked by the media and by their opponents and by third party, whether it was Abraham Lincoln or John Adams or Thomas Jefferson or Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton in 1992, is that is part of the process by which they go through the nomination. It often produces better candidates.
Well, we're going to have better discussion. We're going to thank Robbie for calling in from Clinton, North Carolina. We're going to ask you gentlemen to stay put, and we're going to come back with more of your calls and more comments as Newsmax Prime rolls along.
We want to bring the party together. Does the party have to be together? Does it have to be unified? I'm very different than everybody else, perhaps, that's ever run for office. I actually don't think so. I think that...
It doesn't have to be unified?
No, I don't think so. I think it would be better if it were unified. I think it would be, there would be something good about it, but I don't think it actually has to be unified in the traditional sense.
Donald Trump with George Stephanopoulos on This Week from ABC News, and you heard the Donald's thoughts on unity. We want to get your thoughts right now as we welcome back Craig, Shirley, and John Zogby. And here's the phone number where you can call in tonight on Newsmax Prime. It's 1-877-NEWSMAX, 1-877-639-7629. And out in Newcastle, Ohio, Jim took the opportunity to punch in the number, and he's with us live now on Newsmax Prime. Hi, Jim.
Hi, JD.
Good.
I like to say I'm a Trump supporter all the way. I think that Ryan hasn't done himself any favors. I'm not too sure that maybe all these elites in the Democrat and Republican Party opposing Trump cannot be to his advantage. If the people want somebody other than an insider, that's going to show that Trump is definitely not an insider.
Well, let's turn that question and that observation into a question for our guests, John Zogby and Craig Shirley. Gentlemen, you hear Jim, And he says this will redound to Mr. Trump's benefit. We made mention of it earlier, Craig Shirley, the fact that collectively the numbers for Congress are so low that Ryan may have completely misread this thing with his reticence last week.
Yeah, no, and it's not just for Washington, JD. It's for all the elites. It's for Wall Street. It's for bankers. It's for brokers. It's for Washington government. It's for lobbyists. It's for anybody who's associated with the economic or political elite in America. And why shouldn't it redound to Donald Trump's benefit? Everything else has for the last year. He started out at 2% in the polls. I checked it today. He started out at 2% in the polls in June. He was behind Scott Walker and Jeb Bush and lots of other candidates, and here he is now on the verge of the Republican nomination. He has defined himself by defining his opponents, and he's become a very smart politician along the way. And he knows that he can define himself by defining Paul Ryan as being part of the Mitt Romney-Ryan losing ticket and being on the wrong side of the argument and the wrong side of the equation. So I think the caller is right. I think it will redound to Trump's benefit.
Let me ask Jim about his reaction. When you heard what Paul Ryan had to say last week, Jim, did that make you very upset, very angry?
Very upset and very angry, right along with the Bushes. I say the Bushes have done in Jeb's chances of doing anything politically. And I know I wouldn't vote for him any time in the future. After that, they positively back the one who's got a chance in this country, I think.
All right, Jim, listen, we very much appreciate your observations. Let me turn to John Zogby. John, you mentioned earlier you thought the GOP was now RIP, the party was dead. Is it the border issue, Jeb, and to a certain degree, Paul Ryan and these other open borders guys who want some form of amnesty? Is that the schism that, in your opinion, is going to kill off the Republican Party?
It's one of them, but I agree with Craig again that it is the party's elite that is in real trouble and do not know how to handle Donald Trump. And in every confrontation they've had, they've come up losers. I heard what Paul Ryan said today. He said, I'm willing to step down as chairman of this convention if Donald Trump wants that. To me, that's a guy, I know he wants to be president. I know he's ambitious. I know he's a young man, but that's a guy throwing his arms up in the air and saying, I just kind of give up. I don't see any solution to this. And incidentally, I do want to take 1 second to correct you. Had I been asking that question to Jim, the caller, I would have said, are you very upset, somewhat not upset, or very not upset?
The pollster coming through. See, that's the difference between the pollster and the recovering candidate right here. Hey, listen.
Or none of the above.
Yeah, none of the above.
None of the above.
Well, right. From a different kind of poll, the telephone poll, or maybe we have fiber optics now. At any rate, calling in from Green Bray, California, we've got Steve on the line. Hiya, Steve.
Well, hi, JD. I hear you're up for an award for your work on Newsweek.
Well, bless you. It's Newsmax, but I'm honored to hear about that. It's news to me, but what's on your mind tonight, Steve?
Well, I'm still stuck on trying to heal the confusion that women have regarding Donald Trump's popularity. And, it doesn't seem, JD, that anybody has mentioned that women have their own many, many opinions about men that they're not fond of. And the only comments that Trump has made are with women that he has somewhat of an issue with. It's not every woman, and I think since I worked with women a large part of my life and taught beauty is appealing and taught them to be individuals, I think I know that deep in their heart they know Mr. Trump is actually a ladies' man, and you can look at his dating record and his wives and his family.
Well, okay, okay. So as I'm listening to you right here, Steve, I'm hearing a variation of, ironically, the 1964 Barry Goldwater slogan, "In your heart, you know he's right." And you just heard that, Craig Shirley. Steve is saying in their heart of hearts, women will rally to Trump. Do you think there's going to be a huge gender gap, or will Trump surprise in the general election?
Oh, I don't know, JD. I don't have the newspapers of the day after the election. I think that he does have a serious problem with women. You can't go through life, saying the things that he had and not have a problem with women. Plus, on the top of it, you have the historic gender gap the Republican Party has had ever since the 1980 election, when men preferred Reagan in greater numbers, and again in '84, and it's only accelerated over the many years. Is that there are many divisions now in American politics. There's virtue and corruption. There's a Republican, Democrat, liberal, and conservative. There's geographic, but there's also men and women. It's just a fact of life. So I don't know how he's going to do, but I think that some things, common sense still prevails in some instances, and making and reaching out to women probably makes sense for Donald Trump.
All right, well, let's reach out via the telephone for another gentleman, I believe, from Fort Myers, Florida. Here is Frank. Hello, Frank.
Hello there, JD. Nice having me on the air.
Glad to have you, Frank. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to tell you that I was really extremely appalled, and other business individuals that I'm associated with here in Florida. I don't presume to be one of the elite, but a lot of people that I know, they do very well, and they're in a very high class, and they feel the same way. And some months ago...
And they feel the same way about what? I'm sorry, go ahead. Something about Ryan?
The same way that... some months ago, Paul Ryan said on CNN that he would back, after being asked, anybody that became the nominee for the Republican Party. But then when he's asked the question again, just a couple of days ago, he completely gives a resounding no with a lot of words. And I'm thinking, and other people that I know that are very educated, thinking how is it that somebody that is third in line to the presidency, should the president and vice president be incapacitated in some kind of way and have to leave the country?
Understood. So the whole atmospherics, we're up against the clock, not trying to censor you, Frank. We just got a short amount of time here. John Zogby with 30 seconds. You heard Frank, and it's the classic thing in politics, say one thing one day and say another the next day. I think he's saying that basically the speaker's a hypocrite. Your reaction, 20 seconds.
I don't think the speaker is a hypocrite any more than anybody else is a hypocrite. I think that the speaker is probably very, very troubled. He's part of the party establishment. That's how he's geared his career. That's how he sees his future. And right now, I don't think he sees a future anymore.
Well, I see a future right here. It's just I have to say goodbye to you, gentlemen. To Craig Shirley in Northern Virginia and John Zogby in Utica, New York, you have our thanks. And when we come back, we'll talk national security, foreign policy, and Ben